we would have needed to build a huge amount of scale on the buy side. And in order to do that, we needed to build like a really nice product for procurement to be able to issue RFPs. And so we ended up building a nice procurement product, right?
Okay,
and that just became our job. We were selling procurement software. And sort of the grand vision, was always, 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
Yeah. Okay.
But a funny thing happened along the way. ChatGPT emerged. Again, ChatGPT, you might use it for marketing. You might use it for creative writing. You might use it for, doing a mock-up of a website. Those are very, very different use cases. Sometimes you're going to want it to be creative. Sometimes you're going to want it to be factual. For an RFP, you're always going to want it to be factual, or at least we are taking that stance, right? And we would rather err on the side of not answering questions than having any risk that it's going to make something up. And so we've actually invested a lot of time in addressing the quote unquote hallucination problem. Then the other is the workflows around it. Like ChatGPT is a chat interface. It's really cool, very powerful. You can do a lot of stuff with it. But that's not a great interface for, say, getting sign off from 3 approvers and then sending it off to the legal department to review and going through that. So I think people will continue to pay for business productivity software, like CRMs, like ERPs, and that the workflows will continue to matter, to big companies. And so, we're also investing a lot there.
Let's talk about the future a little bit. What do you see in 3 to 5 years? Like, what do where's this going? Yeah,
that's a good question. I'm really unqualified to answer that. I certainly have my opinions. I'll share them, but I just want to caveat that by saying I'm totally unqualified. Okay. So I guess I do have a little bit of a differentiated take. Hi,
I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on The Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Peter Bonney. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Nice to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So Peter is the CEO and founder of Fastbreak, which is a SaaS company. And I think you help simplify and accelerate, I'm looking at my notes, complex engagements with buyers and sellers. I think that's in a nutshell, right?
In a nutshell, that is exactly right. You got it.
Awesome. So you wanted to just tell us briefly, like a little bit more about that and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been fascinated by this kind of broad problem of how buyers and sellers interact for a long time now. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit on this episode. But the specific problem we're solving now is we're trying to help sellers accelerate the process by which they're able to provide answers to complex business questionnaires in the process of their sale. So it's very common for sales processes, especially for complex products like, enterprise SaaS, say, or also health insurance, even hotels for events, for those sales processes to involve a request for proposal. For those of you on this who don't know what a request for proposal is, count yourself lucky.
I was going to ask you that. Let's define that first, because we're going to talk a lot about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a request for proposal is basically a formal bid process where a buyer is looking to buy something and they know more or less what they're looking to buy. Let's say they're looking to buy a new CRM platform, and they are able to define their requirements, and they'll put out, say, a lengthy questionnaire, sometimes 100, 200, 500 questions. I've even seen them, believe it or not, as long as 2,500 questions.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, it's wild. And, obviously the more complex the product, typically the lengthier these things will be.
Right.
And they will send that out. If in the case of a public entity, like a government or something like that, they might actually post it publicly. They might, be required to do that by law. But then private companies will typically identify a set of vendors that they want to invite and just send it to them directly. And then if you're the seller of, say CRM software in this case, in order to win that business, you've got to complete this questionnaire, right? This is not sort of the classic sales process of, hey, we're going to start with a discovery call, then we're going to have, a custom demo, and then we're going to try to, expand and have a demo for a buying committee. Like, no, you are in the buyer's world. The buyer has defined the process, and you just have to follow it, and you have to provide all the information. In order to win these deals, first of all, you've got to actually be able to provide the information. You need to be able to do it quickly, and you need to be able to do it, sort of with a minimum of kind of internal brain damage, if you will, because there are a lot of companies that struggle so much with these responses, they'll actually miss out on opportunities. Even if they intend to respond, they can't collect the information they need in time to meet the deadline. And so they work on it, and then they just miss it. And that's the worst, right? To invest the effort and just not be able to hit your deadline. So we basically help companies with that process and similar things like compliance documents, security questionnaires, things that might come up later in a sales process is kind of like a check the box exercise, kind of, once you're more in sort of the, post selection stage. And we take your content or our customers' content, we put it into, a database where we sort of build a semantic understanding of their product and service. And then we use AI to help them complete the questionnaire and include workflows to then, not just provide a draft, but then provide the business flows to collaborate across the team. Cause it's always going to be part of the process. Like for any complex product, you can get a good draft with AI, but I think we're a long way away from a point where you're going to trust a machine to write all the content that you're going to put in front of your customer and not check it.
Yes. Kind of like coding these days too. Everyone's like, coding's going to take our jobs. I don't know. I'm arguing with my AI all the time. Like, what did you just do? No, that's not what I told you to do. Sorry about that.
It's funny. Like, okay, you're already touching on, I think the model I like to bear in mind, like to have in mind for the capabilities of AI systems these days. It's basically like having an intern or having a whole army of interns, right? It's like, the coding example is perfect. Like, you're an experienced coder. You've essentially got this assistant that's kind of at the level of an intern, right? And an intern is capable of doing a lot of helpful things, but you would also not be surprised if a human intern screws up a lot of things or misses things or gets confused, right? And that's kind of the level that generative AI is at right now. It can be a very good intern, but you're not going to trust it without oversight.
100%. It still can speed up things and
totally.
Make you much more efficient. Yeah, I'm just thinking of one in particular just a few days ago. I had this argument because it was an edit to a file and it just deleted a whole bunch of stuff in this file and I looked at it, I'm like, why were you doing that? And it literally came back and said, I apologize for being so aggressive. I guess I didn't need to do all that.
Are you going to name names? Which platform was it?
It was not ChatGPT. Claude.
Claude. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love Claude.
It's built right into the editor. Yeah.
Yes.
So
okay. Cool.
It's pretty cool. But yeah. So. Back on talking about RFPs and stuff, it's interesting because I run into it a little bit in the design development world. I don't get a lot of them, just the way we're structured and how we kind of approach business. Yeah. But I have been involved with a few, and it can be intimidating. And then you have those deadlines and everything, drop everything. But the idea of having a tool or AI to help you even like cut to the chase and do a lot of the mundane stuff or structure it for you, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's, look, I think it becomes especially valuable when you start talking about bigger organizations. Like, so, this is an interesting thing about this product, right? Or this whole space. In order to have to respond to RFPs, you've got to be selling to big organizations, right? Because it's going to be rare for a small company to put out an RFP unless they're required to by law. Like if they're a nonprofit that gets a lot of government funding or something like that.
Yeah.
But, so first of all, you got to be selling to large companies. Now, the thing is, the type of organizations that sell to large companies can totally run the gamut. Like you can be a 2-person startup, with an enterprise SaaS product you're trying to sell to large companies. Or you can be the biggest company in the world trying to sell to large companies. And within that spectrum of seller, there's a huge range in, let's say, need for something like this. At the smaller end, we typically find, if you're kind of still a founder-led organization, a tool like this probably isn't going to accelerate you that much, because you're probably still at the point where most of what you're doing is very bespoke, right? Your whole management team is going to be involved in the process of like, how are we going to serve this big customer? Because bear in mind, if it's an RFP, it's a big customer, right? And so, you're going to want to be very, very hands-on in your response. And an AI by necessity is going to kind of take what you've done in the past and sort of extrapolate from it and genericize it and maybe bring in some additional context, but it's not going to be creative. I wish I could say that we've invented something where it's going to be like, oh, it's going to figure out exactly what your customer needs. It's not. It's going to look at what your customer's asking and do its best job. Again, like an intern. It's really at like the bigger end of the spectrum where you've got, I mentioned like these 2,500 question RFPs that I've seen. For something like that, the response team gets up into the dozens of people because it's crossing a whole bunch of different subject areas, the sales team, operations, management, legal. Even after you've kind of drafted answers to that, there's a big cat herding exercise just to get it out the door, get everything reviewed. And,
sure.
You need some kind of process. And so that's where the real value is. And, that's where we're focusing. We're really kind of going after those bigger opportunities ourselves.
So that's awesome. I think we've defined that. RFPs, fun. So let's talk about your well, we're talking about your journey a little bit and how you kind of landed where you are today, with Fastbreak and what you had before that and how that evolved. So we kind of get an idea of that. And we're really the idea today, we're going to talk a little bit about LLMs and that whole revolution and AI. But then how that has impacted you and how you've built your SaaS platform around that, but also, some issues you have to resolve and find kind of the value that you bring to the table because of what's going on here. But that's kind of I'm shaded a little bit there, teaser. Yeah. but let's rewind a little bit. So so tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been interested in technology. I'm going to date myself a little bit. I'm 47 years old. So when I was growing up, we had an Apple IIe. Actually, it was an Apple IIe clone back when that was a thing. Yeah, Laser 128. I'll never forget it. And I just loved that thing so much. I used to just it was so much fun, right? Like if you remember those, you turn on the computer and you were given a command prompt, right? And the distinction between using software and writing code was kind of non-existent. Even I think my mom was doing a little basic programming just to kind of make it work.
That's right. My parents had Apple IIe, Apple IIgs, all that back in the 80s. Yeah. So I'm right there with you.
Stuff. Yeah. Those things were so fun. Not powerful, but very, very fun.
Yeah.
And, I always loved technology. I studied, applied math and computer science in college, but didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I got a job and ended up working in finance for a long time. Landed with a great group of people at a hedge fund, stayed there for 13 years. And that wasn't any kind of grand plan. It was just how it all turned out. And, over the course of that period, I got really interested in this problem we've been talking about how buyers and sellers interact on complex transactions, because I got to see that my portfolio companies, I did a lot of investing, especially later in my career there, with metals and mining companies. And an early stage mining company is basically just a vehicle for raising money and then spending that money on some critical suppliers. Like you raise $100 million, you don't have a mine, you've just got some holes in the ground and some data, and you're going to build a mine, you've got to select suppliers, and you're going to run a big RFP and select a couple of different suppliers, a couple of key suppliers. And I just saw multiple companies really screw up that process and run into problems with the construction of their mine that they bet the entire company on. So yeah, I got really interested in that problem. Left finance kind of, when I was just shy of 40, thinking like, all right, I've got enough time to maybe have a second career, and started a company with a co-founder that was focused on addressing that problem. But the first time around, that was not Fastbreak. The first time around, it was called Vendorful. And we had this idea that the best way to really scale this up was to go after buyers, to build something for buyers, with the idea that buyers will basically dictate what sellers do. If you're a buyer and you say, hey, go complete this RFP on this platform, if the sellers want your business, then they're going to go to that platform. And that's true to an extent. But what we discovered is that the people who are tasked with executing that on the buy side, it typically falls on procurement, and procurement has a number of challenges that let's just call it like, it's like principal agent problems all the way down. And it's just, we ended up solving, I think, a lot of problems for procurement organizations and not a lot of problems for the companies themselves on like the bigger commercial level of the problem we were trying to tackle, if that makes sense. We were basically we ended up building kind of like a procurement, workflow optimization tool, and which is fine.
Gotcha.
Like Vendorful did well, became self-sustaining. We were very happy with it. We exited that business. I'm very proud of what we built. It's still around today. People are still using it. But it was not what we set out to do. And so, come to the end of that, and I'm still fascinated by the problem. I still haven't solved it. This time around, it's like, well, why don't we try it from the other side? Let's try to solve it from the seller side and see what we can do. So that's where we are.
Wow. So what didn't you solve? You ended up building the procurement part of it.
So let's put it this way. So like we built a tool that helped companies run RFPs, and it helped them run it more efficiently. But what we always wanted to do was, and bear in mind, like we launched this company in 2016. So this was all pre-ChatGPT. I forget the exact timing. I think maybe that was post the famous "Attention is Everything" paper. But certainly, LLMs were not front and center like they are today. And we had these ideas then that like, okay, hey, if we build a platform to run RFPs and we get a lot of buyers using this platform to run RFPs, we can collect a lot of data that will then let us build some kind of tool to kind of automate this collection of data, comparison data on both sides, and sort of do the natural language work that LLMs now do, based on what we see people doing in actual RFPs. And, look, nice idea. The reality was that it was just too big for us to tackle. Like, we would have needed to build a huge amount of scale on the buy side. And in order to do that, we needed to build like a really nice product for procurement to be able to issue RFPs. And so we ended up building a nice procurement product, right? And that just became our job. We were selling procurement software. And sort of the grand vision, was always, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. But a funny thing happened along the way. ChatGPT emerged. And that changed everything.
And so that was with when you went to the seller side.
Yeah.
And then I came along.
Yeah. So when that happened, like my co-founder and I, like it caught our attention. We're like, hey, this is really interesting. Like this is maybe the sort of thing that could help us, do what we'd always wanted to do in the first place. And sort of, bypass this entire like RFP issuance, data collection approach to building a machine learning model that would solve this problem, and just go straight after the natural language piece directly and just look at the text, that people, the text of completed RFP responses, that people have produced for, inside a vendor organization, to then let them accelerate their future responses. And we still have a bigger vision than that. Like it's the vision remains, trying to solve like the underlying commercial problem of like, let's put it this way. I think the RFP itself is a solution to a problem. It's a bad solution, but it's better than every other solution anyone's come up with so far. And that the problem that it is solving is the problem that I really want to solve ultimately.
So, okay, so let me understand that. So the RFP, the RFP isn't the solution?
So the RFP itself is a solution to a problem, or any business questionnaire is a solution to a problem. And the problem, the underlying business problem, is that it's hard for buyers and sellers to understand each other, right? Like it's hard. It's actually kind of hard for buyers to understand what they're buying, who they're buying from, and all of the information that they need to know about their vendors.
So it's their challenge is trying to ask the right questions and get the right data out from the sellers that they need to make a decision or a informed business or a purchase or whatever.
Right. And exactly. And the challenge for sellers is providing that information and also trying to guide them, guide the buyers, with their expertise. Look, obviously sellers want to influence them, but, let's take a more charitable view of it. They want to guide buyers to the right evaluation criteria, right? Like if you are, let's go back to the CRM example, right? There's a reason why there are 1,000 different CRM platforms. Not everyone uses Salesforce because different companies have different needs and different niches, suggest different features in their CRM, right? Like a real estate CRM is fundamentally, or has, probably should have fundamentally different concerns from like an enterprise SaaS CRM, right? It's just very, very different end users and audiences. And so that sounds like
it's the core problem here. You can't serve everybody because everybody's got different. So that's got to be one of the big challenges of building this. And have you solved that challenge? Are you on the way? Have you figured, or have you decided we need to narrow it and just focus on this market over here or whatever?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. We're trying to actually focus on a few niches, and really do well there. I think what I've come to understand is that, just like on the, in the CRM example, just like that, when you're talking about, we now serve sellers, right? We help sellers respond to RFPs. The needs of RFP response in the health insurance space are different from in the SaaS space, and they're different from like the construction space.
Or creative space or whatever.
Creative space, exactly. We had a discovery call once with a marketing agency. No, I'm sorry, not a marketing agency, an architectural agency. And we saw some of their RFPs and talked about what they're looking for. And I was like, I can't help you. Like your needs are so specific. And just so far afield of what we are solving. I think it's a really interesting problem. Like, how do you bring creative assets, to bear, in the right circumstances for a particular opportunity? But that's very, very different from, getting the most factual and compliant information for a health insurance RFP.
Excuse the interruption, but I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program. Yeah. So you've chosen a few niches that you're going to start with, and I mean, that's a problem a lot of businesses have. Even my business, like we can't serve everybody. We got to figure out our vertical. We got to figure out who we're going to, or our niche. So it sounds like you've kind of identified a few, and you're gonna zero in on those. And do you sense that at some point you'll scale that and keep snapping on new niches from what you learn, and just figure out what each needs and build tools specific to them? Or
yeah, I think that it's kind of how we've been going so far, and that's definitely the plan for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
We started out thinking we would sell to people that looked like us. We were my co-founder and I were B2B SaaS entrepreneurs, and we know B2B SaaS, and so let's really kind of focus on the needs of B2B SaaS sellers, and that was fine. That was kind of our initial go to market. And then people started finding us in other niches, and some of them, like the architectural niche, not well served by what we built. Others, like we found health insurance, very well served. There's some additional features we needed to add to kind of address some of the specific needs of that market. But that's, as you said, that's how you kind of grow and expand into new areas.
Did you stumble into these things, or did you
totally?
Because that's oftentimes how a business is built, right? It's like you just put it out there, you just start doing it, taking action, and then, okay, we can do this thing. We're actually well tuned to do that.
Yeah. I had never once in my life, in this context, thought about a health insurance RFP. Not one time, which I feel a little bit silly for not having thought of, until one of the Blue Cross Blue Shield companies reached out to us. And I'm still not totally sure how they found us, but they did. And they were evaluating tools in this area to help them with RFP responses. And, did an initial demo, and they thought it was interesting. So then we, said, okay, well, let's sign an NDA. You can send us some data, and we can kind of build a real customized demo to show you what it would look like with some actual context. And they sent me, some RFPs, and my mind was blown. So I mentioned the 2,500 question RFP. That was one of the ones that they sent me.
Oh, really?
As kind of a demo case. And
probably not surprising.
And so it would just totally blew my mind. I said, wow, this is, both terrifying, but also really exciting and a very interesting opportunity. And like I said, I never thought about it for a second until they reached out to us.
Cool. So the underlying tech itself, I mean, are you involved with that, like building the actual platform, or are you in the code, or are you in the managing the team to do that, or do you have a partner that helps you with that? How do you got that structured?
Yeah, so I am primarily responsible for product. So my co-founder is no longer with the company. Had an amicable departure. He was looking to do some different things with his life. We've been working together for a long time. We were both involved in the initial design of the product. I am technical, like I talked about, quote unquote technical. I talked about my background programming when I was little, and always kind of grew up programming throughout my adulthood as well. But I think one of the mistakes I made with Vendorful was being too involved in the product and too in the weeds. This time around, I could not tell you anything about the ins and outs of our code base. I know a little bit about the architecture, but I'm consciously trying to stay out of it. Just focus on features, focus on functionality, and sort of the needs of customers.
And let the programmers or whatever to handle that, and you just kind of guide the vision and the next feature and all that stuff. I mean, that's probably. Did you just figure out that that's probably your? Why is that a better position for you?
Yeah, so I think over the last 8 years of doing this, and by this I mean entrepreneurship, building the tech companies. I have learned the power of focus. And that I need to really focus my energy on the things that are the most important and where I'm going to add the most value to the company. And as a founder, especially at an early stage, the most impactful thing I can do is drive new customers. That's it. And me coding is not going to do that. It's occasionally annoying because I find programming fun. I think it's nice. It's a nice break from talking to customers. I love talking to customers, but I'm not a natural salesperson. It takes a lot of my energy to just have lots of conversations every day. And being able to sit down at a computer and kind of do, technical problems is like a nice way to actually weirdly unwind from that.
I know the exact feeling because I'm
you're in the same boat.
I'm at a stage. I've had this agency for 6 years, and for several years, I was like, I did very little. I kind of got out of the code and out of the actual tech, building that stuff, and was doing that, just running the team and kind of driving things and sales and all that. And this year, things got kind of turned upside down a little bit, and I've had to in the back end of this year, I've been doing a little bit more coding for the time being. But I'm actually like, that's just kind of nice. I can sit here and just be in the code for a few hours, put some music on.
Totally.
Like totally different vibe.
It is. It's like, like, look, if let me tell you a contrasting story. Okay. My co-founder, his name's David. He's also technical. He was a professional, software developer earlier in his life. But he also had a lot more sales experience. But personality wise, he is the kind of person that really gets energized from talking to people. I will never forget, we had one day, where it was like, pretty early on with Vendorful, and, just one of those rough days where he was making cold call after cold call or follow-up email after follow-up email, just talking to lots of people. It was one of those days where we were just getting a lot of negative feedback from people. And, about maybe midway through the day, he's like, oh God, I'm so exhausted of this. He's like, I need to take a break. He just walked out of the room. And we were sharing a space with another, bigger New York startup called Packet at the time. And, he came back about 20 minutes later, pep in his step, all energized, ready to go. I was like, oh, hey, what'd you do? Did you go for a walk? He's like, no, I walked down the hall and I talked to Sam. Sam was another guy in the office. I talked to Sam for 20 minutes and I feel great. I'm like, hold on a second. So you were exhausted of talking to people, and to recharge yourself, you took 20 minutes to go talk to somebody. And he's like, yeah. And like, of course. And, that's just how he is. And for me, it was the exact opposite. Like, if I needed a break, I would, like, I remember from that office what I used to do, if I needed to, like, just have a mental reset. I would go into the stairwell and I would just walk up and down the stairs for 15 minutes. Just quiet by myself, never ran into anybody, and listen to music. And, it's just, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, you gotta, right. Exactly. Yeah. It's even when I was, throughout the years, I'd get into code once in a while, and it's nice. It's also nice to kind of get back in touch with it too a little bit, like to get in the products and get it or whatever. And,
I will,
it's fun.
Sorry, go on. I will say one of the cool things about, working with AI tools though, is that, okay, I'm sticking to my promise to not get in the code, but I can do a lot of dabbling with understanding the capabilities of, the latest versions of ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. And I can do a lot of experimentation with the LLMs directly through, their UI. And so that is R&D. And, I definitely budget some of my time for doing that kind of R&D. And it kind of scratches the same itch.
Yeah. Now these tools are just so amazing, and like using them even to look at, like if I'm doing a code review or something, just looking at what somebody did, it can help you understand that code and like just tell me what this function is doing, or this what they did here. So before we go down any more rabbit holes, continue down this rabbit hole.
Sure.
So you had a light bulb moment with these LLMs and large language models, AI, that it could do some things and solve some problems, or kind of help you with your vision to help people with RFPs and stuff. So that sounds like a pretty pivotal moment for you. But it's introduced something that because we were having a conversation prior to this on our pre-call that you realize, though, everybody has access to these tools. And so you're building something that, you have to find a way to set yourself apart or find value in what you do, because anybody could open up ChatGPT and talk to them to help them do things. So how has that impacted you? And And what are you doing to solve and build a tool that provides more?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, this is the fascinating thing about building software right now. I mean, I think this is, we're seeing the biggest shift, the biggest, kind of, evolutionary spark in software since at least the cloud services revolution, if not from the internet itself.
Yeah.
And, the thing that's a little bit different about this time around is that, like, the World Wide Web itself, the underlying HTTP protocol did not evolve along with the companies, right? Like, people figured out how to build websites, and maybe they figured out how to make websites better and make e-commerce better and more secure and add, functionality so that people would use it more and more. But, like, the internet it's not like somebody updated the HTTP protocol to have e-commerce embedded in it, right? But like ChatGPT and Claude, LLM technology is empowering companies like ours to do like pretty amazing stuff that would have been science fiction 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But the models themselves that are enabling that are also getting better, like at least every quarter, if not every month. And so one of the interesting things that like I'm keenly aware of and a little bit terrified by is that, like, when we started building this, you absolutely could not go to ChatGPT or Claude. I think Claude didn't even exist at the time. But you couldn't go to an LLM, give it content, and say, hey, here's a blank RFP, answer some questions. You could barely give it, like, a list of questions, a list of content, and ask it to answer a single question. People had to sort of invent recall augmented generation to do that, right? And so, there was a brief period of time where just having this RAG framework around an LLM was valuable, was an innovation. It didn't take very long for basic RAG to just be built into ChatGPT, right? Now you can upload a document or several documents and, have it access information inside those documents. And, that was like, I don't know over a year ago.
That's not that long ago. I mean, none of this is like, I remember even using it for a podcast. Like in the beginning, I had to like literally cut up a document or like the transcript or something if I wanted to feed it the transcript and like cut it into short because it couldn't put as much in. So I would like copy and paste bits at a time, and then I'd get it all in there. I said, now talk to it. Now you can just put the whole document in there. It's amazing just in a short period.
Yeah, exactly. And back then, there were, I'm not familiar with exactly what was going on with the podcast transcript space, but I'm sure people had written tools and were selling tools designed to do exactly that, to automate that process. And they were probably, charging money for it. But then the capability just emerged in ChatGPT, and that business probably no longer exists.
It still exists, yeah.
Okay, all right.
But they have to, like you, they have to find what's their value. What else are they doing? Besides just spitting,
No, exactly. And so that's where we are now. Like, so today, you can go to ChatGPT, and especially if you're a small company and this is, enough for your needs, like you can upload a bunch of content. You can upload completed RFPs that you've done in the past, and you can give it a blank RFP. And if it's, not 2,500 questions, if it's like 100, 150, it will probably do about like a B plus job, giving you a draft and maybe like between 70 and 85% of it. And if you're a small company and, you don't have huge compliance overhead, that's probably fine. Why are you going to pay a whole bunch of money to use a product like ours when you can just do a good enough job with ChatGPT to save you hours and hours of work right out of the box?
Right.
And it's only going to get better. We've got to stay relevant. We need to provide additional value because, the models themselves can do so much of that work natively today.
And how
how to
I don't
do
know how
that.
to put this, but do you have like a layer on top that you have the model underneath, you have a layer on top that you're able to kind of help either through prompt engineering or through some kind of programming where you can get it to do some things in a better way than it could natively?
Yeah, so there's I would say there's kind of two main avenues there. One is trying to let's say enhance the AI capabilities by taking advantage of some specific things about the problem. So like, one of the few downsides of ChatGPT or any LLM is that they are, unless you're talking about like a purpose-built LLM for a specific use case, they are generic tools designed for the average to address the broadest possible set of use cases, right?
Yeah.
And there are unique things about responding to RFPs that you can take advantage of to try and let's just say narrow down the problem space in a way that ChatGPT itself can't do. Like, the general structure of these documents. The general structure of the content. That you're always kind of doing Q&A. That the information is always, by and large, going to be consistent within an RFP, right? Like, it's rare that you're going to be responding to an RFP and answering about like 5 different totally unrelated products. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so, you can narrow down the problem space by kind of, and we've done that to sort of like think about what we're actually trying to solve, and sort of build some purpose-built, niceties, I guess, around the RAG framework that take advantage of this. But then also take advantage of the context of these bids, right? So like, again, ChatGPT, you might use it for marketing, you might use it for creative writing, you might use it for, doing a mock-up of a website. Those are very, very different use cases. Sometimes you're going to want it to be creative. Sometimes you're going to want it to be factual. For an RFP, you're always going to want it to be factual, or at least we are taking that stance, right? And we would rather err on the side of not answering questions than having any risk that it's going to make something up. And so we've actually invested a lot of time in addressing the quote unquote hallucination problem. Right. That's to the extent we have any secret sauce, I would say that's it. Like we've done some novel stuff, to be able to identify circumstances where we think, that the LLM is likely to be hallucinating, and to sort of catch that before a human has to. And so, so that's kind of one area, sort of addressing the AI piece. Then the other is the workflows around it. Like ChatGPT is a chat interface. It's really cool, very powerful. You can do a lot of stuff with it. But that's not a great interface for, say, getting sign off from 3 approvers and then sending it off to the legal department to review and going through that. So I think people will continue to pay for business productivity software, like CRMs, like ERPs, and that the workflows will continue to matter, to big companies. And so, we're also investing a lot there.
That's fascinating. Because it's interesting because like ChatGPT, if we just talk about that, they're basically trying to build like a general AI, right?
Yes.
And that can do anything.
Yes.
But we came from a world where there was always talk of, we got narrow AI. It's like this, it just is really good at playing chess, or it's really good at doing this one thing. And then we went broad, and now it seems like, okay, now you have all these capabilities, but you got to bring it back to narrow a little bit based on your field and what you're doing and understanding, and maybe even hard coding some things in there. Like, no, this is what we want you to do in this case, in this scenario. That's interesting. And then the interface part of it too. Yeah. I mean, it's right now you're just not going to have like a blank, like Google search prompt, like similar thing like the ChatGPT basically is. You can have additional, probably enhance that interface to make it easier. And then, like you said, and then the automations, like being able to send it off to the right people and all that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that's where that sounds like where the value comes is really finesse, kind of fine tuning the tool to what your specific needs are.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think that there is this kind of really interesting commercial pressure, that's going on where I think these, it's like I guess the base level of what these models are capable of is getting higher and higher, right? And so, if you think about that in commercial terms, like that means that the bar for getting somebody to pay you, right, as somebody who is not OpenAI or is not Anthropic, to get somebody to pay us for the product, the bar for what we must provide is getting higher and higher. Or another way of thinking about it is, if we're going to offer a set of free features to try and get people to use the product, like the bar for what those free features have to be capable of is getting higher and higher and higher as well. And so it's like I think the market is driving towards this place where, like very sophisticated AI wants to be free, which is kind of wild, right? Like if you told me that 5 years ago, I would have said that's insane, right? Like, no, that's going to be very valuable, right? Like sophisticated AI is going to be super, super valuable. But it's like the opposite is what's happening. It's like the sophisticated AI, like the bar for sophisticated AI, for free AI is getting higher and higher and higher. And like the stuff that people are going to be willing to pay for is like probably all of the marginal bits and pieces that are very niche to their specific use case that like the general AI just doesn't quite solve very well. And it's not at all what I would have predicted 5 years ago, but now that we're living it, like that's totally the way I see the market going.
That's crazy how 5 years ago we would never even thought you probably would have never even dreamed of the capabilities you have now or what you'd have to do to build something like that. Where do you, let's talk about the future a little bit. What do you see in 3 to 5 years? Like, what do you where's this going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm really unqualified to answer that. I certainly have my opinions. I'll share them, but I just want to caveat that by saying I'm totally unqualified. Okay. So I guess I do have a little bit of a differentiated take. I think that we're actually going to kind of plateau on model capabilities. I think we're seeing some evidence that maybe model capabilities are plateauing already.
Yeah, I see some chatter about that. Yeah,
it makes sense intuitively. Like, we've already fed all the world's data to these models. So even if they get more powerful in terms of processing power, like unless there's a step change in, I guess, training approach, it's hard for me to see how they get much more sophisticated in their capabilities. But they could get a little bit more sophisticated. But what I think will definitely happen, and we are seeing happen already, is that they are getting per unit of capability, and sort of however you want to measure that, the price keeps falling, right? Mm-hmm. So like, like GPT-4o mini, is light years ahead of, what, base ChatGPT was capable of when it first came out. But the cost per token is a tiny fraction of what it was when OpenAI first released its APIs. And so like, the impact of that like, even without the power increasing, just if they kind of get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, you can sort of brute force the power by chaining these models together and building more sophisticated workflows with them. The whole agent revolution. If you think about what people talk about, agentifying, agentic behavior, whatever term you want to use. It's really just chaining together a bunch of LLM calls. And that's really a function of cost more than anything. And so, I think that we will see the cost go down. And so even if the models don't get more powerful per se, the things that people are going to be able to do with them is going to continue to accelerate, I guess, the sort of effective capabilities. And so I guess I expect we will not see, I guess here's my concrete take. I don't think we're going to see quote unquote AGI. I don't think we're going to get there within the next 5 years. I think the models are going to plateau, but I think within specific use cases, you will get the equivalent of AGI because you can chain them together in sophisticated ways if you know enough about the problem space ahead of time. That's my take.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense. The cost comes down. You're going to see it more and more baked into everything we're doing. And because it's cheaper. I mean, I'm looking at a system right now, ClickUp, Like they got it built in there, and I can ask it questions about in that specific space about project management and all that. But you're going to see more of that in like every tool. Well, you already do.
It's going to be everywhere. Yes,
but it's just going to get better and more efficient and cheaper, and they'll be able to just include it, or you won't even know it's using it. It just does.
Yeah, but they won't be able to charge for it.
Yeah, exactly. So awesome. So if somebody is interested in learning more about what you do specifically, where do they go on the World Wide Web? And then let us know where you hang out. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, are you in LinkedIn, anywhere else like that?
Yep. So to find my company, fastbreakrfp.com. That's our website. Easiest place to find us. As for finding me, LinkedIn is where I spend my time. It's funny, before I got into software, I was not very active on LinkedIn at all. But it turns out if you're going to sell software, your buyers are largely on LinkedIn. So you got to be on LinkedIn. And so that's,
there you go.
That's where I am.
The simple formula. You go where
you go where the buyers are, like I said.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Peter, and sharing your insights. It's been a really fascinating conversation. Until next time.
Thank you very much, Matt. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.